Hello everybody, once again I'm Liam Crafton Jr., aka Zorval Chan Less Than Guru, and today Mars Video Cat is here, shows up. Today I wish to continue my discussion about experience points and how I specifically do it for my Palladium First Edition game. And my previous video I showed that I use, for the most part, that Palladium experience point award chart so that there's various types of activities and skills and players being in character and defeating monsters, yes, whether that's by killing, subduing, avoiding violence, how all of those things can add, and it's not just one thing like taking out monsters, or you're doing gold as XP, or you're doing milestone leveling, where lots of different activities that a character can do, or a player can have their character do within the game session, will give out experience, and how that experience chart could be used for pretty much any D&D game, with or without modifications, depending on if you want a slower or faster leveling system. But it is set up where, like avoiding unnecessary violence, 100 XP, that's going to be a lot when you're low level. It's going to be a lot. It's going to progress you quite a bit when you're low level, not quite so much when you're higher level. But the Palladium game kind of assumes, very similar to the old BX First Edition AD&D, BECMI rules, where it takes a while to get up, both because of death and because of experience being a lot more to go up. And it was definitely not a X many sessions equaled a level type thing, which you see in, at least that I know, in 4th edition, from what I'm reading, similar thought in 5th edition. But one of the things I wanted to show is there are different ways to handle such concepts as absent players. What happens then? What happens when you have characters that have different levels, and things like that. And I want to say I find it very, very interesting. Again, if you watched any of my stuff, you know that I'm very new to D&D 5th edition. I just started playing it, and getting books. I've had the player guide for a while, but I did just get the Game Master guide. I've heard some good things about it, and I'm always willing to look at any game, whether I like it or dislike it, for those bits of diamonds in the what might be, to me, various roughs. But I do like D&D 4th edition, boo me all you want, but one of the things in 4th edition did is it gave me the idea of having just everybody have the same XP. I had never really experienced it pre-4th edition. After 4th edition, there's a few times, different games, most games I guess I've played after that, that have been a kind of a party experience. Not as party as in there's one big pool that everybody's taking from, but every character in the party has this much experience, no matter if you're there that session, not, your character dies, they come in, they start at whatever level the rest of the group is. But here's something from the 4th edition Dungeon Master Guide, talking about absent players. And it says, one issue that's going to come up is how to handle experience for characters who weren't present for a session. As with other table rules, decide on a policy and stick to it. So that's good advice so far. You can come up with your own policy, but make sure that everybody knows about it. You know, come up with it, talk to it with your group, and then if that's what you decide, stick to it. Now, although it's all right to make exceptions for a player who misses a lot of sessions for a good reason. So basically what that's saying, sticking to it, is don't just willy-nilly one day go, okay, we'll give Joe the experience, he wasn't here. The next week Tim misses and you're like, Tim doesn't get it. It means if you're going to do it for this person, do it for that person. But if there's somebody who, for whatever reasons, misses a lot of sessions, maybe you think about it differently. but it says the game, and they're talking about this D&D 4th edition, works a lot better in a lot of ways if you just assume all the characters gain experience in advanced levels at the same rate, even if their players miss a session. You don't have to worry about players lagging behind the others, and players who miss a session don't feel like they're less effective. D&D is a cooperative game, and it is more fun when all the players are on a level playing field, able to make equal contributions to the group's success. All the players can share in the excitement of gaining a level at the same time, and it makes tracking XP easier. That makes sense, makes it easier. In fact, the group could decide just to delegate the job of tracking XP to a single player who could announce it when characters go up a level. Of course, the alternate is to give XP only to the characters who are present and who participate in each encounter. If the character is dead, while the rest of the party faces encounter, that character doesn't get XP for it. If player misses a session, that character doesn't get XP for the whole session. The result is that players who never miss a session get ahead, and those who miss an occasional game and eventually wind up a level or more behind. There's nothing wrong with that. So they're giving various ways, but kind of the default thinking is that it's easier, and the game 4th edition adventures are built on assuming that you have everybody at the same character level. And that was the first time that I had ever thought about it, and it's one of those things, and I still think about it and in ways feel about it, is that when I was in my 20s, teenagers doing D&D, 20s doing Palladium, etc., and other games, it's like you wanted to, at least when I say you, I mean people at my age and my various groups, it was like if somebody didn't show up, you're like, oh, they're out doing this, they're out doing that, they're having a life outside, I'm just stuck here and, doing this. We all like it, but they're doing other things. Punish them, they don't get experience. We're the ones who are hardcore players, and we're the ones who are going to get the experience. And it was kind of that, and everybody at the table got the experience, anybody out didn't get the experience, etc. By the time D&D 4th edition came out, 2008, I think I actually discovered it and started looking at it 2010-ish, then I was not at that age. I was at an age where I was had a job, had got through college, had a job, had responsibilities, etc. And missing a game sometimes was because there were important things in life, especially with players who had family, spouses, children, etc., job duties that they had to be on call, etc. And it was punishment enough not to be able to play. So when I first read that in the D&D Dungeon Master Guide, I thought, wow, this is a wonderful thing. And after that, when certain of us players were playing games like Earth Dawn, everybody got the same legend points, and when we would play like 7th Sea, we would get the same, but they had certain ways that if you kept things, maybe you got to get an XP or so, whatever their experience points were called. I can't quite remember it currently. But then Torg Eternity came out in 2017, and they had the same type of aspect and philosophy of everybody gets the same, and if you bring in a new character, they have the same, and if somebody dies and they bring a new character in because their old character is dead, they have that same experience. And again, at first, it set with me well. But after, say, 7-8 years of this, I started to look differently at it. And while I still agree with things like sometimes it's punishment enough that you are forced to miss a session that you really want to show up because there's life problems. I've had those recently, and because of life problems, I haven't been able to show up. So I understand that aspect. But there's also parts of me that think if you're there in a game really doing something awesome, get a little, why can't you get a little extra for being there and doing something cool, coming up with a cool idea, doing different things like that. And when Torg Eternity came out, there was a lot of blowback against everybody getting the same XP. There were people who said that if everybody gets the same XP, then that's going to lead people to not invest as much. That if they knew they did get more XP if they did cool, super things and thought of new ideas and stuff, that they would do them. If they knew that everybody is just getting 5 XP at the end of every act, then it kind of didn't give as much incentive. I haven't always agreed with that, because I've seen people that it doesn't matter what type of game system, how the XP is going to it, they will put 100% into it, or they will just come because they want to talk to their friends, and they don't think about the game from the end of the game session to the beginning of the next game session. And that's maybe not something that some parties enjoy, that some groups enjoy. Other groups are fine with it. My personal groups have a mix of both. Some come in because they've been our friends for 30 years and they like gaming, but outside of those sessions, they really think about other things and don't want to invest the time. I think that's fine. I'm one that I like thinking about it all the freaking time. That's probably why I'm a game master a lot, showing up to most of the games. But and Torg is one of those games, I've said it many times, that I think if you bring in a character from any XP, they can work in a session with other games. And I would even go as far as saying, and Torg Eternity even works with beta and alpha characters, simply because the beta characters will give the Game Master the Game Master possibilities. Some people call them void possibilities, and your alpha character doesn't. So if the Game Master gets those possibilities from the beta players, or the beta characters, and they just spend those against the beta characters, then that kind of balances. You can have that balance. But in original Torg, I had people that had been playing for 20 years, on and off, yes, but the character is very advanced, having above 10 ads, 10, 15 ads in their good skill, had done a few attribute boosts, and somebody brand new came along with the very first ads, the 16 that they get, and they were able to participate along with the veteran characters. Games like D&D, Palladium, maybe not so much, but there is a point where the XP levels the experience needed get farther and farther apart. So while it might be you're always seen behind, there is a point where you could catch up in the future. Now, having said that all, and talked about the D&D 4th edition, which blatantly, as I read, told you choose, there's various ways, but their recommendation was to have everybody have the same XP. Then I recently, just a few days ago, got the Dungeon Master Guide for 5th edition, and I was doing this XP thing, thinking about it, and decided, hey, how does XP work in D&D? They have the milestone, my thoughts on milestone, but then they have experience points, and they talk about absent characters. Typically, adventurers earn experience only for encounters they participate in. If a player is absent for a session, the character misses out on the experience points. Over time, you might end up with a level gap between the characters of players who never miss a session and characters belonging to players who are more sporadic in their attendance. Nothing is wrong with that. So they're kind of going a completely different route. Not saying that the group should all, it's a cooperative game, everybody is assumed to have the same XP. Basically, it says some people might not get the XP, it's fine. That's kind of what the 4th edition says, but they even kind of hit it harder, is saying that a gap or 2 level difference between characters in the same party isn't going to ruin the game for anyone. Some DMs treat XP as a reward for participating in the game, and keeping up with the rest of the party is a good incentive for players to attend as many sessions as possible. And again, that's my old teenage, early 20s thinking. It wasn't the D&D 4th edition, which was talking about everybody getting the same, and what most of my groups have done, if they haven't used milestone leveling, but it's one of those. They do give here. They give the alternate as giving absent characters the same XP that the other characters earned each session, keeping the group at the same levels. And then it says few players will intentionally miss out on the fun of gaming just because they'll know they'll receive XP even if they don't show up. And I do agree with that. I don't think people will be, oh, I'm going to earn XP, so I'm going to go watch a movie tonight. Or I know my character is going to go XP, I'm going to do this. It might be I feel very sick, and I know my character is going to lose XP. I really want to be there, but now I can feel that I'm not forced to be there being sick, or whether it's going physically to a place or just getting online on Roll20 or Foundry or whatever your virtual tabletop is, and I need to be in bed. I know I'll get some the experience. So I did find that very interesting that they both the 5th edition and the 4th edition have the same options, but they've flipped what they consider the primary option, if you will. And having now said that about different ways to do things, and my previous video explaining the chart, I will explain how I do experience and the reasons why I do experience, and maybe it's something that will be maybe it'll influence you or inspire you to change up the rules. And I'll actually give a few examples that one very recently from my last game, which hasn't been posted yet, but kind of shocked me in a good way. Made me really like the reasoning that I had been doing thing, and kind of cemented in my mind that for me and that game and that group that it is actually working. So I give XP for everybody in the current character. Anybody who misses a session gets 90% of the lowest XP that I give out to any player character. And when I say that, yes, I give different XP to different different characters, depending on what the player does or what the player has their character do, ideas that come up, and things like that. I look at that chart. If one of the characters is the one that avoided unnecessary violence, or the one that talked the party into it, then they're the one who's going to get that 100 XP. It's not going to be the one who was rooting to kill. If there's two player characters and the players are arguing opposite sides of it, and one of them is the good result or the result that works, that's the one that's going to get it. Now, if they're in a group and they're fighting a menace and they all participate in the way that they can, then yes, everybody's going to get that. What was it? 200 for being the lowest, or sorry, 25 for being the lowest, 300 for being the big range between the lowest of the minor and the highest of the great menace or major menace. So some aspects everybody's going to get, other aspects different people are going to get. And I will say it's hard. It is difficult. The virtual tabletop makes it easier for me. If it was in person and I as a game master am actually having, and this will show some insecurities and self-doubt and not wishing to rock the boat and other social constructs happening, would be, and I admit, hard for me to go, okay, Jenny, you get 300 XP today. Bob, you get 200. Immediately, you might have somebody, why did they get more than I? What did they do that I didn't do? And then the next person gets something that might be a little bit different. And maybe they think, well, I got the same as Bob, but I did a little bit more than Bob. And each person has their own view on what they should get. And some people might go, if I show up and I don't get what everybody else gets, then why, just opens up, at least theoretically in my mind, a possible potential problem. So one of the things, if you are in a group, you could do, as a game master in every group that I've ever been in, the game master collects character sheets. The player does not bring character sheets home because sometimes they don't bring them to the next session. They'll forget them. Now, in most games that I've played, the game master gets that copy. The game master has it. They're going to be there the next session because they're the game master. They better have those copies. But if a player wants to have a copy of that, then, and which I always did, I would get a second character sheet and I would have two character sheets at the end of the night. I mean, they would be exactly the same at the end of the night, end of the session. I would give one character sheet to the game master. That would be the official copy, and I put game master copy, GM copy, and player copy up at the top. That would be pretty much the only difference. And I would take the other one home so I could study, look at, determine what I wanted in the future. If I had a question in the between sessions, I could do stuff like that. But the game master is collecting all of it. The game master then, after the session, everybody goes home or whatever, and they can kind of decompress after the adventure, think about it, and write down the experience. And then if the character had went up a level, they could text. Now we have texts, emails, different messaging services, etc. Hey, you went up a level. And work with it there. With virtual tabletop, it's very easy, and that's what I do. At the end of the session, everybody logs off. I decompress. I think about the adventure. I look, if I need to, at my recording of the session and go, okay, this person did this. This person did this. These three people did, all participated in this, and kind of add up. And there's been occasions where everybody gets the same XP. There's been some occasions where somebody's just not having a good night and gets low XP, and somebody does some super awesome thing and gets a lot of XP. The people who aren't there, I give 90% of the XP so that they can at least start to advance. And that's for absent players. Now, one of the things in this session, or this campaign, I wanted to kind of throw at, or not necessarily throw at the players, but I wanted to have in the game was there's not a lot of adventures out there. So if the character dies, then they don't come in with a new character at that much XP. They come in with a 0 XP character, level 1, if they wish to have an occupation that is one of the normal occupations. If they want to have one of the optional occupations, which in Palladium is like the peasant farmer, the scholar, the merchant, things that don't have adventuring. They're doing a different job and then became an adventurer. If they want to go that route and either stay with that merchant or peasant or whatnot, they can do that. If they want to switch to an occupation, an adventuring occupation, they can do that, but then they go to the way the occupations you switch, which is earning up a certain amount of experience, and once you've earned that experience, then you become a new part of a new occupation. But if they choose that optional one, I give them 50%. So if, say that they were around 3rd level, then maybe they'll come in at 2nd level or something like that. Give them a little boost. But again, I want people not to just kill off characters, to come in with another character that has the same XP. That's another one of the reasons why I decided to do this, was seeing the games where people would come in with that group XP. Like I said, when I first read about it in the 4th edition D&D guide, and Toward Eternity kind of had the same thing, and I was like 4th. That was what kind of was hitting me at the time, which made me really want to use that system. But then what I started seeing happening was new players coming in, characters dying, and new characters coming in that were substantially more powerful than the current characters. Because whenever you bring something in from the outside that can be created right then from the ground up, instead of taking those tiny steps, you can kind of know at that time what the campaign is, what the goals are, what is happening, and certain decisions that you might have made because of what was happening in the past that don't necessarily are happening currently, you might change things. The other thing is if the game master says, pick this many magical items, because now you're giving that option to the player to choose magic items, and they can choose the ones that benefit the character the most, whereas those who have gone through all of the adventures, their magic items are what was given to them during the various adventures. So if nobody had, if there's a sword, I'll give a real example. If there's like a special sword and nobody has a sword skill in Palladium or a skill for that, and the person picks it up, maybe at 3rd level, they will then, when they get more skills, they'll choose the large sword skill, or the short sword, depending, small sword, which depending on what that weapon is. If a person just comes right in and they are able to get that weapon, they got a battle axe. They found a cool battle axe. This is the magic axe that I get. I have axe at full level. They didn't have to make that in-game switch because of what was presented to them and what they wanted at that time. That changed from what they started their character with. So that is one of those things that really started making me think and realize that personally, I guess I really don't like the idea of new characters just coming in at the same level of the established characters. In Torganized Play, which is a Torg Eternity based, and I've stated this before, you can't have that group experience because then you have hundreds of people that would have between 100 and 200 XP just because everybody in the whole organization has it. So they had to break it down, and it's worked. It's worked well. So again, that makes me realize that you can have different levels, you can have different experience with different games, whether it's a level-based game like D&D, Palladium, or if it is a point-buy game such as Torg or Torg Eternity. You can put those restrictions on different people getting different amounts of experience. And another reason, which I think, and I'll present as being interesting in giving different characters different amounts, some days you might have a good day, some days you might have a bad day, and it does allow the characters who had, the players who, for whatever reason, had to miss some sessions and start lagging behind, they can do something really awesome and jump them ahead. And I will present that actual scenario that happened. So one of the players, if you watch my Palladium playthroughs, that plays Cassius, missed I won't say quite a few, but there were a certain series of times when the player was not able to come. We still had a session, so his character got 90% of the lowest XP. So if you had a person that had 100 XP and a person who had 500 XP, then anybody not participating that night who couldn't make the session would get 90. So it would be close to the low, pretty far away from the high, depending. Most of the time, the separation of the XP is not that much. Usually it's maybe 100 or so XP. But had fallen behind. But then, the last session, the character was at a huge disadvantage. The character was at a point where they couldn't heal, even magically. Priest tried lay on hands, healing touch, did not work, did not heal. And the character had been hurt. The character had been pretty decently hurt, so was by no means close to being full by the time they get into another fight. And during that fight, that character made the decision that the healer of the party was more important than they were, so went between the monster or one of the monsters, the skeleton, and the healer. Put his life in danger. And when I'm looking at that Palladium XP chart, I see that it is self-sacrifice. So there had been a time when I was wondering, putting your life in danger versus self-sacrifice, what's really the difference? And that's when I determined that the self-sacrifice would be when you know you're going to get messed up or killed. Putting your life in danger is a little bit less. That self-sacrifice or potential self-sacrifice is, you know, what you are doing is going to kill you, but it will help somebody else. And that's specifically what the player said, specifically what the character did, and getting that XP, boom, jumped that character pretty far. I won't say it jumped him ahead of everybody, but definitely caught him up to the people that had the lowest. And there's not a huge discrepancy between it, and also since different occupations in Palladium and in the game I'm doing have different XP thresholds for the levels, it's a whole bunch of random things whether or not you've made a level. But XP wise, that character went from one if not the lowest amount from some of the sessions that had been missed at certain times to pretty solidly in the middle of the XP. So you don't always, if you do it that way, you don't always have the player always lagging behind. They can do things, they can participate in the game and catch up, if not exceed. So that kind of, again, at least for me, my group, the way I play, the way I game master, cemented in my mind that I really like this. Because if you come in brand new, 0 XP, everybody else has 8,000, you might think, I'm never going to catch up with them. And if you were in a game where the game master gave out the same amount of XP to everybody present, unless everybody started missing games, you would not catch up. Especially if you have 1 or 2 players that always make every game no matter what. You would never catch up. But in this way, with there being variable XP depending on what the player and their characters do during the session, then that player puts the time, the effort, the skill into doing the game, playing, role-playing, doing things, self-sacrifice, stuff like that. They could, or potential self-sacrifice, potentially they can advance and catch up. So I really like that type of dynamic where the in-game stuff can make it so that you catch up with the others. So having said that, that's another part. I didn't want to make yesterday's way too long, so I'm presenting this as a continuation of the XP. So for me, specifically, every character may get different XP depending on what they did or didn't do during the session. I go in at the end of the game and calculate the experience total for each of the characters. I place it there. If a character levels up, then I, through whatever electronic means we communicate, whether it's a text message or another messaging service, an email or something like that, I'll send out to say, hey, congratulations, you know, Decimus made level 8. You know, and then I'll do here's a quick things that you need to do to level up, and I keep the Foundry game open so people can come in and level up their characters when they need to, and then we just control, or just continue on. And that also makes it so that people don't necessarily worry about that XP and that metagaming. I'm trying to keep that, so I do a lot of GM hidden roles where I see the role, the player sees the role, nobody else sees the roles, and things like that with spells. People whisper to me and stuff, and that's to keep that metagaming down. It's going to occur, yes, but you don't get the jealousy, you don't get a lot of the, well, why did I not get it and they get it and stuff. And just having over 30 years of gaming experience with me and this home group of mine, which most, can't say everybody, but most of the people have been with me throughout that time, it just fits, and everybody seems to be on board, everybody seems to be having a fun time, and that is an option. So may work for you, may not, but it's something that maybe you'll want to try. Maybe after hearing this, seeing the previous video on that experience chart and how that works, on this one, how different experience point awards to different characters can work, and how people don't always necessarily, even if they're behind, it doesn't mean that they have to stay behind. If they go down to 0, they can work their way up, and it kind of gives more dynamic than just a standard everybody gets this, everybody gets the same level. Yes, that is easier. Believe me, it's a lot easier to keep track of experience points for one set of experience and everybody gets it. Maybe not quite as easy as the milestone, but again, I like seeing what I do, I participate in a game, and how that works. So that's what I'm doing in this one. So once again, I'm Liam McCrafton Jr., aka Zorbal Chan Less Than Guru, and until next time, I will catch you later.